whistleblowers have confirmed the FBI is investigating parents. So you remember back in September of 2021, the National School Board Association sent a letter to President Biden saying you need the Department of Justice to come in, you need the FBI to come in to investigate these parents. They're just too hostile at these school board meetings. They were hostile over masks. They were hostile over mandates. They were hostile over virtual learning. They were hostile over critical race theory and a lot of parents who were learning exactly what the curriculum was because their kids were doing school virtually at home during the lockdowns, and they were actually hearing what their kids were being taught. Remember, you had even those school boards saying your parents don't have a right to listen in on the teaching. So then that came in September 29th. October 4th, a one-page memo goes out to the FBI from the Attorney General Merrick Garland about partnering, using the FBI resources to look into these what's happening at these school board meetings. Then you get just a few days later, that's on October 4th, the same October 20th, 2 weeks later, a joint message from the Criminal Investigative Division and Counterterrorism Division of the FBI about can they, which we've seen this before time and time again, bring a legal challenge, criminal challenge against one of these parents. Again, this whole idea of trying to silence speech. Well, Congressman Jim Jordan and Congressman Mike Johnson, Congressman Johnson will be on the broadcast with us later today, sent a letter to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. They now have whistleblower reports about the FBI continuing to use a threat tag, edu officials. So again, they've got a threat tag set up investigating parents. They've got examples of this. It's all based off a whistleblower. This is after Merrick Garland testified that the counterterrorism unit would never really be involved because of parent speech.
So what they've done is, again, the leadership of the FBI and the Department of Justice has weaponized the FBI to go after parents. We've got enough problem with terrorists around the world and in the United States, but we're going to go. They're going to make a priority and have a tag that talks about education, an EDU tag. The tag means that this is part of their threat assessment. That they have once that happens, they tag it and it goes to a special group.
We're going to stay on it, and we're going to stay on this. We'll be right back on Sekulow. I want to read to you part of the letter. This is from Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Mike Johnson. Congressman Johnson will be on the broadcast with us live. This is the letter to Merrick Garland after this whistleblower information has come out that the FBI is, in fact, opening up investigations into these parents. Now, after they've opened up the investigations, they found out that there's nothing there. So this, again, but they're putting FBI files out on parents, sending FBI agents out to interview parents. And a lot of this you can see is partisan motivated. We'll go through some of the examples, but I want to read this from the letter. The whistleblower information is startling. You have subjected these moms and dads to the opening of an FBI investigation about them, the establishment of an FBI case file that includes their political views, and the application of a, quote, threat tag to their names as a direct result of their exercise of their fundamental constitutional right to speak and advocate for their children. This information is evidence of how the Biden administration is using federal law enforcement, including counterterrorism resources, to investigate concerned parents for protected First Amendment activity. And then we had the disinformation governance board announcement. We know that that's out of Department of Homeland Security. These are all, what is the one unifier here? Law enforcement agencies.
Yes.
Badges, guns, knock at your door,
Department
investigate,
of Justice,
bring cases against
indictments,
you, criminal cases.
Right. So this is just like the IRS case, where you had the government target by names of organizations. They did one of them here because it said they had the word liberty in an organization they were affiliated with. The same exact thing happened in the IRS cases. Remember the Lois Lerner emails saying we'll get DOJ and the FEC involved. But what is the common thread here is that they're using law enforcement. Now, you have to understand something. When a file is open, an investigation begins, Andy Economou, our senior counsel's here, who is also a U.S. attorney and head of the criminal division in the U.S. District Attorney's Office in Atlanta. So, folks, when you get a file opened, this is significant. So, first of all, what is the Department of Justice doing here?
Well, the Department of Justice is becoming a weapon of the left. It is becoming a gun for the left pointed at the heads of people who are interested in the welfare of their children. For y'all, I can't tell you how much this really concerns me because you may open your mouth at a school board meeting, and I've represented school boards. I represented the Fayette County Board of Education south of Atlanta, and there were a lot of parents there who were angry about things that were happening in the school board, but it did not make them domestic terrorists. Think about this. You get up and you say something, you maybe raise your voice, you show a little zeal and passion in what you say, and suddenly you're tagged as, what do they call it here, an EDU official terrorist. The FBI comes knocking on your door, shows their badges to agents, you become a target, a file is opened in Washington, D.C. upon you, you are a federal target of an investigation, whether or not you're ultimately acquitted, and I don't mean that in a criminal term, but I mean cleared of the charges, your name is still in the FBI's records. This is very scary, folks.
And Merrick Garland said it wasn't happening. So now you got a whistleblower inside the FBI saying it is happening.
Yeah, this directly from the letter. We've learned from brave whistleblowers the FBI's open investigations with the EDU officials threat tag, get this, in almost every region of the country and relating to all types of educational settings. And they have some examples, as we talked about, the Moms for Liberty. And you know what they said for the Moms for Liberty? Oh, they also know she was a gun owner. The fact is, again...
Well, how'd they know that, by the way, without doing an investigation?
And second, that's legal.
Of course.
These are all legal things. You have a Second Amendment right to own a gun. You can be part of a group called Moms for Liberty, and you can vocally oppose the defeat politically of any school board member. And saying that we want to beat you politically, we want to take you out of office, that is not a criminal speech. That's not even threatening speech. That's just political speech. Politics is a win or lose game. You have to win. You have to beat your opponent. You have to take a strong position. You have to be against something. You have to be for something. I mean, again, political rhetoric in America has always been tough, and it's always been protected speech. But these school board associations, remember, these are unions. They have a hold over the Biden administration. They send the letter. Merrick Garland tries to walk away from it. And the truth is, now they know the FBI didn't walk away from it. It did, in fact, continue to move forward with counterterrorism investigations into parents. This dad had one because, quote, he fits the profile of an insurrectionist because he rails against the government and he believes conspiracy theories. Who's identifying what is a conspiracy theory? And when is railing against the government make you a criminal?
And petitioning the redress of grievances of your government is protected by the First Amendment. But here's what I think people have to understand. There is to get this information, to find out if the other person was registered with this group or that he believes in these theories, they had to investigate this person. This doesn't just come out of the air. This isn't just, a neighbor says, I'm worried about this guy. They open an investigation. And I think it's important for our audience to understand what that means. A counterterrorism investigation open up on moms and dads who are opposing a school board. Andy?
This is terrifying. This is terrifying that this is happening in the United States today, and you ought to be terrified. I don't mean that in an understated term. You ought to be scared to death that the fact that you actively passionately advocate for your children before a school board could result not only in a visit from a federal law enforcement official, the FBI, weaponized as the IRS was, weaponized by Biden as the IRS was weaponized by Obama, and then you now have an FBI file in Washington, D.C. in your name as a possible terrorist.
Now, so the FBI agent, to get this information, who are they working with inside the FBI? The Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office?
Yeah, with the U.S. Attorney's offices. That's what this memorandum that Garland sent out said. The Executive Office of U.S. Attorneys, all U.S. attorneys, all the FBI agents. In other words, it's a coordinated effort put together to scare you from exercising your right to free speech. That's what it is.
And I think this is the broader theme we're seeing from the Biden administration leading up to, what is it, a midterm election. When did we see this last time? Remember, when did this happen last? It was under the Obama administration after the passage of the Affordable Care Act, leading up to a midterm election where the Democrats knew they were going to get clobbered. What did they try to do? Silence the grassroots movement that was growing naturally, kind of outside of the Republican Party, but certainly a conservative movement, and the Tea Party groups. They wanted to silence them. They used law enforcement tools to attempt to silence those groups. They used the IRS, they used the FBI, they used the Department of Justice. Here again, it's a natural grassroots movement. That's the scariest thing in politics to any politician, is not political parties and the kind of the party activists who are in line. Party. It's the real grassroots movement that pop up when the people who usually wouldn't go to the meetings, the people who usually don't take strong political positions, suddenly get awoken to what is going on. They get active. They start their own local groups to say, you know what? It's not that hard to defeat a school board member. It doesn't cost that much money to run a school board race. We can run the school board, and we can then set the policies and the tones. And I think this, again, this is the biggest threat to politicians, is natural grassroots movements that aren't being forced by either major political party. This happens to be a conservative movement, and so you've got these, they're trying to use everything they can to get this speech silenced. Remember, it's awful but lawful. They're defining what's awful, and this is what they're saying here. It's awful that a Republican state elected official, again, expressed public displeasure with the school district's mandates, and that was, quote, inciting violence. A Republican against a Democrat saying he didn't like Democrat policies was, quote, inciting violence.
Listen to do we play the Merrick Garland bite yet? I want to play this because he denies this, and we now have whistleblowers, but here's what he said.
I do not believe that parents who testify, speak, argue with, complain about school boards and schools should be classified as domestic terrorists or any kind of criminals. Parents have been complaining about the education of their children and about school boards since there were such things as school boards and public education. This is totally protected by the First Amendment.
But Andy, it is totally protected by that party got right. What he got wrong is that they are classifying these parents as terrorists.
Well, I mean, he says what he just said that we quoted, and then he writes a memorandum that says just the opposite. We're going to get the FBI working with each U.S. attorney to facilitate strategies for addressing threats against school administrators, board members, and have dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting, assessment, and response. He's a liar.
A threat to them is, I disagree with the policy. The Republican disagrees with the Democrat.
Right. They consider that inciting violence. Now, in all these cases, these came through this National Threat Operations Center tip line. And the cases that are mentioned in this letter from Jim Jordan and Mike Johnson to Merrick Garland, the FBI started the file, did the investigation, brought these parents and individuals in, and what did they conclude? There was nothing illegal about what they were doing. And in fact, most of the time, what the extreme parts about what they were being told in these tip lines didn't add up. There was no evidence. They weren't making threats. They weren't saying they were going to use guns and all of these things. But again, the idea is that if you just let it out there, that most people, that's their hope, will say, you know what? I'm not going to show up. I don't need to be dealing with the FBI. It's just like with the Tea Party saying, you know what? Who wants more involvement by the IRS in your life? So I'm just going to sit back. And that's what we talk about, the idea of getting you to shut up, chilling speech, chilling the political organizing. So as you know, folks, as we reported, there's a letter went out to Attorney General Merrick Garland from Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Mike Johnson. Congressman Johnson's joining us now. He's a ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties. Congressman Johnson, I want to go right to you with this letter because you've got whistleblower reports now that contradict Merrick Garland's testimony to your committee about parents being investigated by the FBI for voicing their concerns at school board meetings.
That's right, my friend. This is a big deal. You know, we have been investigating this for some time. Our Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, you know, we have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice and all of its agencies and divisions. We've been investigating the Biden administration's misuse of law enforcement resources. Part of that has been to target concerned parents. They've been doing this since last fall. Remember, all the angry mama bears and all the dads were going to the school board meetings They were protesting. They were letting their voices be heard. They were exercising the First Amendment, Jordan, and they were letting these school boards on the local level know that they're not on board with the CRT nonsense. They didn't like the mask mandates and all that. It's a quintessential part of our process. But here's the problem. The Department of Justice and the FBI targeted those parents and considered them a threat. Now, here's the deal. When Merrick Garland came in front of our committee in October, we asked him under oath, right in front of the Judiciary Committee, whether that was true or not. He said that those parents had never been targeted. Now we have a whistleblower that confirms our worst fears.
Mike, this is Jay Sekulow. And you write in the letter, in sworn testimony before this committee, you denied that this was to Merrick Garland, you denied that the Department of Justice or its components were using counterterrorism statutes and resources to target parents at school board meetings. We now have evidence that, contrary to your testimony, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has labeled at least a dozen of its investigations into parents with a threat tag created by the FBI's Counterterrorism Division to assess and track investigations related to school boards. We just were talking about, Mike, that you put all this together. All the actions of the Biden administration for the last several months, the governance board for misinformation and disinformation, the president really targeting anybody that disagrees with him is ultra MAGA, and then you have parents being targeted by the Department of Justice. What do you want to see happen here?
Well, ultimately, we need accountability. We've got to make sure that the Department of Justice is not weaponized to become a political arm of the Democrat Party. And that's exactly what they've done, Jay. All these surreal, dystopian developments that you just described and many others lead only to one logical conclusion, that the DOJ is no longer this neutral arbiter, the agency that's in charge with maintaining our justice system and making sure that the law, the law is equal, everyone's equal before law and justice is blind, all that. They've thrown it all out the window. They're using this to advance political objectives and go after their political opponents. And sadly and very unfortunately, not a dozen, but dozens now, we know because of this whistleblower, dozens of parents who have just shown up at their local school board meetings to show their care and concern for what their children are being exposed to, they've been labeled as domestic terrorists. This absolutely happened. The threat tag, by the way, is EDU officials. That's the FBI's tag that they put on these files. And they're treating these people like they're enemies of the state. It's unconscionable. And Jay, at the end of the day, the greatest threat here, you and I both know, is that it's undermining the people's faith in our institutions. And if we lose our faith in our system of justice, brother, in a constitutional republic, we're in real trouble.
Well, it reminds me, just 1 second here, it reminds me exactly of what we had to do with the IRS when they targeted groups, the same thing, based on their names, Liberty, 9/11, Freedom. That became a be on the lookout list, and then we had I'll never forget in the discovery, getting those emails from Lois Lerner, where she said, well, let's get in touch with the FBI and the FEC and bring a criminal case because that will shut this down. So we know where this can go, and we took action, and then, of course, we won, but you had to take legal action to do it.
Well, that's right, and that may be a component of this. In the meantime, Jim Jordan and I, in our letter to the Merrick Garland last night, we told him, listen, number one, you have to now produce all the documents and materials that we have been sending these requests for over almost 18 months now on this issue, and things related to it. They haven't been forthcoming. They haven't shown us what they are required under the law to produce for Congress. So we demanded that. We also said take reasonable steps right now and immediately to preserve all those records, right, responsive to our letters, because you know what they'll do, Jay. They'll get rid of the evidence. So this is serious stuff. It goes to the highest level. This is the top law enforcement official in the country. And remember what's so ironic about this is Merrick Garland, they told us, remember, he was going to be on the Supreme Court, as you well know, Jay, and they told us he was the lion of the left. This guy is supposed to be the smartest, the man of the highest integrity on the left. And it turns out he just raised his hand and lied to Congress. I mean, this is really, really serious stuff, and we are not going to let it go.
What I'm concerned about, Congressman, too, is the idea that in most of these examples, it's someone who is using political speech saying, you know what, we're going to get rid of you guys. The school board officials, they're elected. The school board members are elected officials. And the idea that in America, you can't say to someone, you know what, we're going to beat you politically. We're going to run candidates against you. That suddenly that makes you a threat. It makes you're inciting violence if you express displeasure with their policies. I mean, this idea, again, what I'm concerned about is that there's no longer this idea in our country. it's not shared by both political parties anymore, that we protect free speech. In fact, now saying that you're a free speech absolutist is a bad thing in America. But we've heard a use by this disinformation board that's awful but lawful. Of course, they're defining what awful is. I mean, I think here there's the disillusion with the institutions of government. But then there's the second idea, which is they really just want all these parents and everybody who may have been politically motivated to get involved to sit back and say, you know what, I'm going to make the calculation. I'd rather not have the FBI knocking on my door, so I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to voice my concern. I'm not going to get involved.
That's exactly right, Jordan. And the three of us have been serving in this arena, defending our fundamental freedoms and free speech and religious liberty our whole careers, because we saw that a day like this may come one day. And we're here now, right? You have the government, the highest levels of power in the country, labeling citizens who have disfavored opinions. We had a press conference yesterday. We're going to defund that disinformation board, give it our best shot. Jim Jordan and I and Lauren Boebert and others. Right. And we stood there, and I stood in front of this whole cadre of Hill reporters, Washington Capitol Hill reporters, and I said to them, guys, everybody, wake up out of your stupor and remember, this is not who we are in America. In America, we do not trust the government to be the arbiter of what is true and acceptable speech. That's called tyranny, guys. You're the free press, right? The First Amendment guarantees the right to free speech and a free press. Guess what? That's in jeopardy right now because the government may disfavor what you say tomorrow, right? We're all in jeopardy. We have to stop this. We have to keep government in check, and we have to defend freedom, and it's never been more important to do that than it is right now.
Congressman Mike Johnson, a good friend of ours for a long time, fellow worker and for religious freedom, for First Amendment freedoms. And it's always great working with you, Mike. And I'm thrilled that you're heading this up with our friend Jim Jordan. This is really important. Thanks, Mike.
And folks, again, Congressman Johnson is running to a committee hearing, but I want you to understand, too, they have exposed this. So now they're going to be able to say, not to Merrick Garland, not that it's not just an idea that the FBI might be doing this. They have a whistleblower who's providing them information. They get federal protections for that whistleblower to provide information to Congress because, again, they have the oversight. They have the power of the purse. They can, like he was talking about defunding and things like the idea. And even when you're in the minority party, you're still on the committees. You have the ability to seek information. The idea here is that it's no longer just hypothetical.
Right.
They've got the evidence now that the parents are actually getting the knocks from the FBI.
Harry Hutchinson, our director of policy, has a piece up at aclj.org called President Biden's Extremism. We just been talking about in the first half hour this, the Department of Justice going after parents at school board meetings. And then we've got on top of that the new misinformation, disinformation governance board run by someone that thinks they could edit your tweets on Twitter, that she should have the authority to edit and put context in your tweets. So in other words, you don't have free speech. They can correct your speech. And you look at all of this, Harry, and it points to a very draconian environment where the government's heavy hand is at the people's free speech, which is always dangerous.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at Nina Jankowicz, for instance, she doesn't believe you're entitled to have speech unless it's approved speech, which is directly contrary to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. So one of the things that we should notice is that the Biden administration typically hires individuals who fail to respect the United States Constitution, they fail to respect the rule of law, and they hope that they can continue to get away with it. And I think, again, it's up to the American people to respond to this infringement, in my opinion, of their constitutional rights by getting engaged and by going out and basically supporting candidates who support the United States Constitution.
Andy, you said also what the Department of Justice has done is weaponized the FBI.
It is. The FBI has become a gun, a mortar, a weapon, just like they did with the IRS that we beat back. They are now taking the FBI and they're saying, if you don't comport with the speech that we like, the speech that we approve, the speech that is within the parameters that our, to use Harry's excellent phrase, our ministry of truth says is the speech that's permissible, we're going to make you a target. we're going to make you a terrorist. We're going to open a file on you in Washington, D.C. We're going to tail you. We're going to come to your house, and we're going to get you. That's exactly what they're saying here. Don't think it's any less than that.
I just want you to understand that one of the examples from the whistleblower was a mom the FBI investigated after a tip because she was part of a, quote, right-wing moms group. You know what it was called? Moms for Liberty. But, it's right-wing, so you've got to investigate that. These are people that had the FBI come to them. An FBI filed open up on them because they had the audacity to speak out against an elected official, against a public official, and a school board member. This, again, it's the basis of trying to get you to shut up and sit down and not engage politics.